strange and creepy encounters with kids. The first encounter, the mysterious girl. I was waiting for my bus, wearing my headphones, and looking down the road in the direction it would be coming from. When I turned around, I was startled to find a girl, around 8 years old, standing right next to me. She just looked at me without smiling and said, "You're really, really pretty." I thought it was a sweet, albeit slightly strange compliment, until she followed up with, "I'm going to rip your face off." I was completely speechless. I turned to look at a man, who I assumed was her father, standing at the edge of the street just watching us. The girl saw me looking at him, then suddenly turned around and started screaming at him at the top of her lungs. The man stared at us for a moment, then bolted away. The girl turned back to me, still expressionless, then ran after him. That was one of the weirdest experiences I'd ever had. Fast forward to a few days later, I was in a different neighborhood, a few suburbs away from that bus stop. I was standing outside my friend's apartment, smoking a cigarette while waiting for him to come down. Out of nowhere, I saw that same little girl walking toward me. She locked eyes with me the entire way until she was right in front of me. Then she said, "I know you." I was caught off guard. "Huh?" was all I managed to say. She stared at me for several minutes, watching every move I made. She followed my hands when I moved them, looked at my feet, and then back at my face, almost as if she was sizing me up. It was beyond awkward. I didn't want to just walk away because, well, she was just a kid, and I was waiting for my friend. After what felt like forever, she frowned, narrowed her eyes, and said, "I'll be back for you." Then she slowly shook her head as if saying, "Oh, I gotta go," and walked away. I swear, I felt like I had just met the Antichrist. The second encounter, a childhood memory that haunts me. This is a memory I had buried deep in my mind, but it recently resurfaced during a conversation with my siblings about our late father. When I was about 4 years old, I had a bad fall at the playground that left a deep cut on the back of my head, requiring stitches. A few weeks later, my dad took me to the doctor to get them removed. I was surprisingly calm and still, unlike the scene I had caused when they were put in. As a reward, my dad bought me ice cream and took me to the beach. It was a small, secluded town in Australia, and even though it was the middle of summer, there were only a handful of slightly older kids swimming, without their parents. Before my dad left, probably to use the public restroom or something, he sternly warned me not to go any deeper than my knees because I wasn't a strong swimmer. Then he disappeared. A boy, around 10 years old, with blonde hair and a bright smile, paddled over to me. He asked my name and age, and I eagerly told him, even boasting about my bravery at the doctor's office that morning. He seemed amused, and then asked why I wasn't swimming further. I explained that I wasn't allowed to go in past my knees until my dad got back. He assured me that I wouldn't get in trouble if he was teaching me how to swim. And besides, my dad wouldn't see because he was gone. When I hesitated, he smirked and said, "Are you afraid? I thought you were brave." Wanting to prove myself, I followed him deeper until my feet no longer touched the bottom. That's when he grabbed me and held me underwater. I struggled, but he was much older and stronger. Looking back, I realize now that he had intentionally separated himself from the other kids so no one would notice what he was doing. Drowning an unattended child is the perfect crime. It could easily be dismissed as an accident. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, he abruptly let go. My dad had pulled me out of the water. I remember the look on my father's face, bewilderment, fear, and pure rage. For what felt like forever, he patted my back while I screamed and sobbed over his shoulder. By the time I had calmed down, the blonde boy and the other kids were gone. My dad drove around looking for them, but they had vanished. He never told my mom. She would have lost it at him for leaving me alone. Shortly after, we moved to a different town. I don't think he ever reported it to the police, though I can't say for sure. But I know one thing for certain. That kid truly meant to kill me. There was something malicious about how he tightened his grip when I struggled. He was serious. He wasn't just playing. The third encounter, the boy at the playground. Today, I took my 5-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter to the playground to meet up with a friend and her daughter. It was a quiet area with a large grassy field surrounded by trees. Behind the trees, there was a construction site. The only other people there were a man and his 2 kids, a boy and a girl, both around 10 to 12 years old. At one point, my son wanted to go on the seesaw, but none of the other kids wanted to join him. As I was about to go over, the older boy, who wasn't part of our group, walked up to me and said, "Hi, do you want me to play with your son?" It was weird that he asked me and not my son, but I shrugged it off and said, Sure, bud, go ahead." The boy went to the other side of the seesaw and started playing with my son. His demeanor was odd. He didn't smile, his voice was flat, and he didn't say a word to my son at first. Eventually, I walked back to the bench, and I could hear him finally speaking to my son. Maybe he was just shy around adults, I thought. After a while, the father of the boy walked past me, and I casually mentioned, "It was really sweet of your son to offer to play with mine." The man stopped dead in his tracks and said, "That boy is not my son. I don't know who he is. He just walked up and asked if I wanted him to play with my daughter, and he's been following us around ever since." My stomach dropped. I immediately looked back at the seesaws. They were gone. Panic took over. I ran, shouting my son's name, until I saw them, walking toward the trees. I sprinted as fast as I could. My son turned around when he heard me, trying to walk back. That's when the boy grabbed his arm and started pulling him toward the trees. My son yelled, "Hey, let go of me now!" One thing to know about my son, he has ADH and hates being grabbed. When he gets frustrated, he gets aggressive. And in this moment, I was grateful for that. He started punching and headbutting the boy like crazy. The boy let go, and as I reached them, he disappeared into the woods. When I asked my son what happened, he said, he told me he knew where Ryan from Ryan's Toy Review lives and wanted to take me to play with him. I have no idea what that boy's intentions were. Maybe it was innocent, but deep down, I know it wasn't.